Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 678 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our ninth book just came out. It's called From Letters to Leaders, The Legacy of Service. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, human nature tells us to bring in people just like us into our organization, whether it's your fraternity, your sorority, or your company. But what I've learned over time is that diversity within your organization is a very big strength that will help you to solve problems faster as a group, to see things before they become a major issue, and help your organization to grow faster. Our next guest is going to tell us more about why everyone wins when we get equity and diversity right. Celeste Warren is a visionary leader who had an impressive 28-year tenure at a global Fortune 100 company, where she rose to the esteemed position of Vice President and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. During her decade-long leadership of the Global Diversity and Inclusion Center of Excellence, Celeste implemented groundbreaking initiatives that fostered a culture of inclusivity and equity, setting new standards in the industry. Celeste is a published author, and her articles on diversity, equity, and inclusion have been featured in numerous national and global publications, and she has had the opportunity to speak at various events across the world. She has recently published her second book. It's called The Truth About Equity: What It Really Is, What It Isn't, and Why Everyone Wins When We Get It Right. Welcome to the show, Celeste.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for this invitation.
Oh my God. Listen, you're welcome on the show anytime you like, because your expertise, I think, is so needed, especially when we start talking about student organizations like fraternities and sororities. I think it's really important to keep these things in mind. Now, let's go back to your undergraduate experience because, I'm a Tennessee guy. You decided on the University of Kentucky for your undergraduate experience. So I'm wondering, why do you choose Kentucky?
Yeah, why did a girl from a small steel mill town in Pennsylvania go to Kentucky?
Right.
I actually went there on a volleyball scholarship. So I was a student athlete all through high school. I played basketball and volleyball, and then I was recruited in both sports. But I wanted to get out of Pennsylvania and Ohio, and so I went down for my recruiting trip and really enjoyed the school. But the seller was when they took me to Rupp Arena to a basketball game, and I'll never forget my dad looking at me and saying, "I guess we're done with the recruiting trips, aren't we?"
That's
Because that was it.
hilarious.
That was it.
That was it. It was a basketball game. You see, I mean, the big sports really does make a difference, I think, in terms of the minds of students. And when you see that in person, you're like, man, if I could be here for the next 4 years, this is pretty cool.
It was cool.
The other interesting thing about you is you spent nearly 3 decades at Merck and you rose to a global leadership role. I'm wondering what lessons from that journey would you want the college students to start applying right now?
Well, I think one thing is when I was entering into the workforce, I thought that I couldn't be a leader because I was young, I was in my 20s, and I just felt like I had to just follow until I got to some level in the organization. But the truth of it is everybody needs to be a leader, whether you have people reporting into you directly or not. Everyone needs to be a leader, and because you have a sphere of influence, and you can notice that when you're in school, because let's say something comes down the pike from a vice president or a leader of the organization, and if you're the person that they turn to and say, "Yeah, the VP said such and such and such and such," well, what do you think, Mike? If you're that person, you have a span of influence and a sphere of influence that is almost as powerful as the person who's in those upper echelon roles. And so you never stop demonstrating leadership skills, even if you are just entering into the workforce.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. I think it's a great lesson for college students too. I mean, even if you're a freshman in your sorority of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, your opinion matters just as much as the super senior that's been there, for 5 or 6 years. That's your organization, and ultimately, people are going to view you through that lens, your organization. So, yeah, step up and be a leader. I mean, everybody's a leader as far as I'm concerned. So I really like that answer. And I think the students today, they feel a lot of pressure to have everything in their life all figured out. And we know that life, I mean, you and I, we both know this. Life is full of all kinds of left turns, right turns, U-turns, wrong turns. I mean, I've had it all, right? So how did your career actually unfold compared to what you imagined in college?
Oh, when I went to undergraduate, um, I was very myopic, very pigeonholed. I wanted to be a reporter, full stop. Since eighth grade, I wanted to be a reporter. I was a student athlete. I liked communications. I liked being on the school yearbook and everything, year staff and the newspaper. So that's what I wanted to do. Everything at Kentucky, I took majored in telecommunications, minored in political science, and I just forged full steam ahead. I interned at the Sports Information Office and then also interned at WVLK Radio, largest radio station and the voice of the Kentucky Wildcats. And so worked there for a couple of years, 3 years or so, and wasn't making hardly any money. And so I got tired of writing home to my mom and dad and saying, I need help to make rent and all this other stuff. And 10% of the people in that industry make 90% of the money, and the other 90% make the other 10%. And so I thought, well, when I go into TV, because it was radio, I'll start making the big bucks. So I got an interview with the ABC television affiliate in Lexington, and I got the job. And so they sent the contract to me, and it was, Mike, it was just a few $100s more than what I was making as a radio reporter. You talk about totally dejected. I was totally dejected. I was like, I can't do this. And so I turned down the job, and I was just going through this pre mid-career crisis. And my sister, who was living in Pittsburgh at the time, she said, well, why don't you just go back to grad school? And go to grad school. And I was like, I don't know. And she said, just go to grad school and then you can figure it out, at some point in the 2 years that you're there. So my mom talked me into coming close to home, went to Carnegie Mellon University, and the counselor there talked me into human resources. And at first I was like, I don't want to do that. Oh my God. It's like, because my picture, my mental image was some woman in some office passing out applications. And she really opened my mind to all of the disciplines within the human resources field, talent development, acquisition, organizational design, all of that. And so I started doing that, and it was it was basically love at first sight from that standpoint.
I love it. So you don't have to have it all figured out. Sometimes you build the
No,
plane kind of while you're in air a little bit.
that's
Uh,
exactly it.
yeah, I mean
I
that
mean, how
might be a
many
little bit
times
scary.
I have friends, and even my kid, my daughter, who changed their major 2 or 3 times. How many people do you know like that, right?
Oh yeah.
It is what it is, and so you just basically, life is a journey, and you learn as you go.
Right. 100%. I completely agree with that. You've been on two campuses that certainly have great Greek life. Kentucky has Greek life, and certainly Carnegie Mellon, great school, also has Greek life there. What do you see student organizations like fraternities and sororities? What are they getting right in terms of inclusion, and where do you think they still struggle?
Yeah, so I would say where they're getting it right. The kids today are so different from when I was in school. They are connected globally based on technology and social media. We didn't have phones or anything like that when I was in school, but they're so connected with the external world. And so they're not just kind of living under the bubble of their university. Many of them are paying attention to what's going on. They're a lot more in tune as well with what's going on as well. And so I think that, look at the activism that happens on campus, and kids really standing up for what they feel are their rights. I think that is so very, very important. And that part they have right. Paying attention to what's going on externally outside of the university, the impact that it's having on the university, onto them as students in the university, and really paying attention to it. And then, where they see sort of a misalignment or disconnect, doing something about it. And I applaud the courage that a lot of these students have, and their ingenuity, and their ability to be able to speak their mind and elevate their voice. That's what I think they absolutely have right. I think where they could probably still grow, there's an element of still that aspect of wanting to, what's the word? Wanting to sort of stay in their cocoon. Some of them are still staying in their cocoon, still staying in like groups. Because in some cases, you go into the student union, or the where everyone is eating, and in some, depending on the university, and I don't want to stereotype, but in some ways it still looks like a high school cafeteria, where you have people that are in these groups or cliques or whatever, still staying together. And I know it's easy. I get it. I did the same thing when I was in school. But I quickly learned, once I graduated, that I have to expand and widen my screen and my aperture so I can take in everything that's going on throughout the external world. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I really like that. And you're right. I mean, I think the advantage of going to college today is to expand your network. And so I challenge the listeners to meet people that are different than you. That's the only way to learn. That is literally the only way to learn. Go and hang out with other people that you wouldn't normally hang out with. And I'm telling you, it will open your eyes to things that you've never seen before. And that's a really good thing in terms of growth in college. You talked a little bit about activism, and I think that's a really important thing for us to talk about because over the years, you and I, especially in a DEI sense, we've seen all kinds of activism. Some are impactful, and maybe others are less impactful. I remember there was a time when on social media we would change our profile to a color, and that would, basically signify that we're aligned with a certain cause. So how can students move from good intentions to something that is real, measurable impact in terms of activism?
Well, I would say, number one, first, do an assessment of the systems, the infrastructure, the policies that exist on your campus. So, for example, take an inventory, look at various different student policies, look at what the university stands for, read news articles and different things, because Lord knows a lot of these universities are in the headlines. But read and see what they're doing, what they're saying, how they're supporting different initiatives. What initiatives are they supporting externally outside of the university? And do an assessment, an inventory. Look at the school's policies. Look at their procedures. Look at what some of the college professors, what they're getting, the publications that they're being published. Look at all of these different things, and then say, okay, is there alignment with what the university says are their fundamental values and beliefs as a university? And if you don't see a connection in their policies or procedures, their infrastructure, how they run the school, then start to speak up, and speak up in a way where you can go to the university leaders, have conferences, have meetings with them first to say, look, this is supposed to be the foundation of the university. And what we're seeing is this particular policy that seems to not be aligned with it. Go adult to adult, because you're an adult in college now, and have that conversation with the staff of the university first. And then when you feel like because a lot of times when you have those conversations, they'll listen to you, they'll respect your point of view. And if they can move and align, then they will. If they can't, then hopefully they'll explain, but you should definitely ask why. So first have that discussion. And then secondly, if the discussion doesn't go well, then meet with the person who's over that person that you spoke with. But continue to elevate your voice. I think that's really, really important. And elevating your voice is simply elevating your voice unless you looked at the infrastructure and try to make sure that there's change, systemic change within the university.
Yeah, those are really, really great tips. I like that a lot. I also would encourage you to speak to administrators. I had a couple of students that I was coaching in terms of talking to the university president. I mean, you are the client, you are the customer. And so you shouldn't be afraid to speak to administrators about some of your concerns and start that dialogue. I think, really the best universities are ones where everybody is learning. It's not just the students, it's also the administrators, the faculty, the staff, the university president. This is a learning environment, and none of us stop learning. I mean, we're learning until the day we're no longer on this planet, hopefully. So I really like that a lot. I love Gen Z. I'm a big fan of Gen Z, and I'm so grateful every single day that they're here. Truly, 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 because they're so motivated, and I love their values and everything about them. I'm just grateful they're here because I think they're going to fix a lot of problems that we've unfortunately set in front of them, like the environment and other things. But where they struggle, I think, is two places. Number one, patience. They don't have a lot of patience, a little bit light on that. A lot of that is because of the phones. Again, it wasn't their fault. And then number two, I think they struggle with accountability. And
Mm.
so you have this equity and action framework that actually emphasizes courage and accountability. So
Mhm.
why are these things like courage and accountability so hard in group settings at universities like Greek life?
Well, when you're coming in, at least, and I'll talk about myself, when you're coming into a university, you're young, you're trying to make an impression, but you want to try to make friends and fit in too, right? That's on your mind. And so I think sometimes, standing out for what you feel are the wrong reasons, we're kind of fearful of that. So we come in, I can remember coming into the university and this big, huge university, and the first class was there were hundreds of students in there, and I'd never experienced anything like that before. And so, for me, it was how do I fit in? How do I fit into this infrastructure, this university? So I think that's a big deal to students as well. So it's hard for them to want to take that step out initially when they first come, but eventually they start to understand the ebbs and flows of the university, and they really do understand it, and they say, okay, well, I'm I'm gonna pave my way, and I start to see the different entities and groups that I want to be a part of. And so that tends to come in. But the accountability part, I'll tell you, there are people in corporations that still have a problem with that because accountability goes beyond responsibility. And in the university setting, let's say I'm a student and I'm on a group project with a group assignment, and we're all going to get the same grade at the end of the day. And there's somebody on the team that is not pulling their weight. And, the younger me, maybe freshman, sophomore me, would have been like, okay, I'm not going to sort of narc on them. I'm just going to do their work because we all want to get an A, right? And you kind of ignore them. But then the junior, senior me, the grad school me was more like, oh, no, 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 you will carry your weight. You will. And so you gradually start to learn it when you see that you have the stake, there's some sweat in it for you, sweat equity. And it's going to impact your grade. It's going to impact your outcomes. So that's where the accountability comes in to make sure that everybody's pulling their weight. And you just grow, you grow up and you learn to adapt and you learn to grow.
I like that. When I think about ethical leadership, I certainly think about guys like Dr. Martin Luther King, brother
Mm.
of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Can you explain to our audience what ethical leadership looks like when nobody is watching you?
Ah, Mike, that's what you said. Ethical leadership. So basically, you have beliefs, values, perspectives, ideals that are foundational to you as a person. And you talk about that. That's great. You talk about it to your teams, to your colleagues, but you have to walk the talk, not just talk it. And so, what you do, the decisions that you make, the way that you carry yourself, how you interact with different people has to demonstrate those values that you have as an individual. And so, whether that be the workplace, in the university setting, in the Greek setting, whatever it is, you have to walk the talk. You have to demonstrate it. And not just when people are looking at you, because anybody can do that when the eyes of the world are on you. It's when I used to say when I was working and head of HR for a manufacturing plant, it's on the third shift when supervisors aren't around and you have a choice that you have to make. Do you make the right choice? That's when integrity and ethics comes in. When you know that you have to make the right choice, even though people aren't looking, and you may get away with making the wrong choice.
Yeah, really nice. In your book, The Truth About Equity, you actually challenge a whole bunch of common myths in the book. What's the biggest misconceptions that students still believe?
I think some students still believe that equity is about giving preferential treatment to one group over another. And that's not what it's about. That is not what it's about. It's about making sure that everyone has access to opportunities. And because we didn't all start in the same place, in the same town, in the same life experiences, same cultures, we have to meet people where they are to bring them to those opportunities and access to those opportunities.
Very nicely done. Listen, I think this has been absolutely fantastic, and I really appreciate all of your time here. And I do get to Pennsylvania often.
Oh,
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. My wife is actually from Lancaster County, so
oh,
I do get to Pennsylvania often, which is always good. And I do love good food. So I'm wondering, when I'm in your neck of the woods, is there a particular place I should be going in order to get some great food?
oh gosh, let me see. My husband's the foodie, but let me see. Well, you know what? You don't have to go to some rich restaurant. You just go on the streets of Philadelphia, get yourself a Philly steak
Right.
and with the cheese and all that stuff and enjoy.
Yes, there's a couple of really good spots in Philly that for sure, if you want a cheesesteak, I don't think there's anywhere else better on the planet to get a
Hmm.
cheesesteak. And so you really can't go wrong with that staple for sure. All right, well, listen, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I think that a lot of the college students listening, they're also going to want to engage in these types of conversations on the campus. So if our listeners want to bring you in to speak on their college campus, where can they go in order to connect with you?
Yep, you can go to my website. It's www.crwdiversity.com and contact me through the website. And I would love to be able to come. I love coming to universities and talking about, especially for the seniors and grad students and postdocs, that you're getting ready to make that transition from academia to the workplace and how you can do it and still be you. So assimilate, don't assimilate, accelerate.
I love it. Fantastic. All right. Well, now they have a new resource for their college campus. Bring Celeste Warren in to your campus to speak. Also, pick up her book. It's called The Truth About Equity: What It Really Is, What It Isn't, and Why Everyone Wins When We Get It Right. Celeste, thank you so much for sharing all of this great expertise with our listeners today.
Thank you for the invitation, Mike.
Well, of course, Celeste, it's my pleasure. And to our listening audience, if you learned something today, I want you to share this episode with your entire chapter. Drop it in a group chat, share it on social media. You never know who needs to hear Celeste's message today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.